Hello there. Welcome to Whispers.exe, where the silence watches back. The following story is a work of fiction, created for atmospheric and entertainment purposes. With that being said, get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the dark settle in. It begins like most things do, quiet, unnoticed, and far too late to stop. The cedar bone mask. The first sound Elise Navarro noticed was the wind scraping the canyon walls, a dry, papery hiss as though somewhere out of sight, 1,000 pages were being turned by invisible hands. It never stopped, not even during daylight, but at dusk it began to carry faint rhythms. 3 soft beats like knuckles on hollow wood, followed by silence long enough for her pulse to fill the gap. Then, 3 more. Always 3. Always from a direction she couldn't triangulate. She set her recording rig on a flat shelf of sandstone, the locals called Ghost Ledge. No road reached this place. Elise had hiked 2 days through unmarked desert, guided only by a hand-drawn map acquired in a university archive. The map claimed an extinct tribe once settled here, carving chants into the rock, phonetic echoes of a language now forever unsung. Elise hoped to make the stone speak again. She did not expect the stone to speak back. The petroglyphs began low on the cliff. Concentric spirals, jagged sigils, a skeletal face rendered from negative space. She placed a directional mic inches from the carvings, pressed her headphones tight, and whispered the phonemes she saw. Clicks, hums, snapped consonants that tasted of dust. Nothing answered. She repeated them at midnight, beneath a sky so clear the stars looked cold to the touch. Still nothing. But the recorder rolled on, and Elise, lulled by her own steadied breath, eventually slept inside her canvas tent pitched beneath Ghost Ledge. Morning. New markings had appeared. Higher, 2 full meters above the highest previous array. Fresh grooves, their edges lighter than the surrounding rock, as though chiseled in the short hours between moonset and dawn. She measured them with her palm. Rough, warm, almost. She told herself erosion could expose hidden layers overnight, a facade collapsing to reveal older glyphs. Yet the pattern looked too deliberate, the spacing too clean, and there was the way the spirals now angled toward her tent, as if the canyon itself were tilting its face to listen. That evening she replayed the night's audio. Nothing at first, a low hiss of desert wind, faint insect buzz, her own distant sigh. At the 5-hour mark came a tone, barely audible, a sub-vocal murmur beneath the noise floor. She boosted gain. The hiss thickened, resolved into layered breaths. Then a shape of sound surfaced, vowels pressed together like lips behind stone. El-lus. Her name stretched thin, pronounced by no tongue she recognized. She froze, finger on the pause key, heart knocking out that same triplet rhythm she'd heard in the wind. She spoke aloud to the recorder. If someone is here, speak again. Her voice quavered, more fragile than she intended. Silence answered. The canyon exhaled dust. She set fresh batteries, angled the mic up toward the new carvings, and read the latest symbols into the dark. Each sound felt heavier than the last, as though syllables were stones she had to lift with her jaw. When she finished, she switched off every light, let darkness settle around her gear, and waited. Minutes slid by. Then, from somewhere above, stone began to talk. Not in words, but in tiny pops, flakes detaching, sand trickling, carving in real time. She could not see it, but she heard it. A slow scratch, pause, scratch like a blind sculptor tracing letters none could read. Dawn bled over the mesa. More glyphs. Higher still. Now the skeletal face had acquired horns, and beneath it a ring of figures, stick-limbed, headless, all positioned in a circle as if in ritual dance. Yet one of them had a head. Not a skull, not a circle. A crude outline of a mask with hollow eyes, vertical slashes for teeth. At its base, 4 tiny lines, fingers pointing down toward Elise's camp. The wind carried no rhythm that day, only oppressive heat. She packed water canisters, climbed a switchback trail to inspect the fresh carvings, and set her hand within the mask's hollow mouth. The cavity was deep, deeper than the stone's thickness suggested, and somewhere inside the rock felt damp, almost spongy. She withdrew, skin crawling. The smell that lingered on her fingers was like old bone left too long in sun. On the descent, she noticed something else. Her own boot prints, doubled. One set ascending, hers, one set returning, also hers, buried beneath faint overprints leading toward her tent. She had not come back this way. Someone, something, had followed her tracks, stepping inside them, widening them with an uneven gait. The stride was shorter, the heel drag heavier, as if the stone itself had gotten up to walk. Night 3. Elise drank little, ate less, sat cross-legged before the recorder as stars pinwheeled overhead. She did not speak. She listened. An hour in, static throbbed like distant thunder. 2 hours. Syllables surfaced, unfamiliar phonemes, yet somehow arranged around her name, anchoring alien sentences to a familiar center. At 3 hours, she heard a second voice, lower, scraping, a counterpoint echoing the first, reciting glyphs not yet carved. Call and response. Stone learning speech. Speech teaching stone. She pressed stop. The canyon went weightless with listening. Elise, a dry whisper said, no longer through headphones but inches behind her ear. She whirled. Nothing. Just darkness, and beyond it the towering cliff, its new symbols glimmering like exposed bone in starlight. She fled into the tent, zipped the door, jammed her recorder beneath a sleeping bag as though signing a peace treaty with silence. Hours later, she didn't know how many, she woke to find the zipper open, webbing slack. The gear lay where she'd left it, but fine desert sand coated the microphone head, filling its mesh like particulate breath. On instinct, she played back the ambient track. Footsteps, soft and steady, circling the mic. Between them, a distant chorus. Dozens of hushed voices repeating a single phrase. Not her name this time, but words she didn't know, heavy with hard consonants, ending in an open vowel that fell into echo. She cross-referenced her field notes. No match. She searched the linguistic database on her laptop. No match. It was a word unborn, minted in the silence of last night. She hiked 10 miles to the Jeep she'd stashed at the canyon rim. Battery dead, cables chewed through as though by rodents with metal-starved teeth. She checked her phone. 1 bar. No data. The world outside seemed to be quietly detaching from her, thread by thread. Back at camp, she found the tent collapsed, poles snapped. The recorder lay atop the crumpled canvas, still running, its storage nearly full. The last hour contained nothing but breathing, shallow, nasal, and beneath it a wet clicking, like a tongue working cracked lips. Occasionally a scrape, a sigh. Then, unmistakable, the sound of stone sliding against stone, as though something enormous shifted just beyond the microphone's reach. She unspooled a fresh reel of copper wire, stretched a perimeter, hung tiny aluminum bells at intervals, an improvised alarm. The bells chimed randomly, even with no wind, as if invisible hands tested their weight. Elise sat in the dark holding her field knife. Moonlight washed the canyon pale, casting the cliff face in milky relief. High above, a new figure took shape, half finished, its outline still rough. A woman kneeling, head bowed, arms outstretched. In lieu of a face, the cedar bone mask. Its mouth gaped, and for a moment Elise was sure she saw breath plume from the carved teeth, white as dust devils in moonlight curling down toward her. She spoke into the night, voice breaking. "What do you want?" The canyon answered with a rustle, stone on stone, as if the cliff were shifting its weight to listen better. She repeated the unknown word she'd heard on the tape. The bells trembled once, twice, then fell silent mid-swing. A low vibration traveled up through the sand, into her boots, into her bones. Within it, she thought she detected syllables, echoes trapped inside a subterranean drum, striking marrow instead of eardrum. Each pulse aligned with her heartbeat, altering it, making it skip and reset, until her chest felt like a drum being taught a new rhythm. Sunrise revealed the kneeling figure complete. Beneath it, fresh text carved in the tribe's phonetic script. Elise traced the shapes with a trembling finger, transliterated them phonetically, then spoke them aloud. The desert went silent, as though every insect had paused to listen. Her recorder, slung at her hip and running, spiked, view meters slamming red, though no sound reached her ears. She ripped off the headphones. From the cliff came a crack, dry and decisive. A sliver of sandstone sheared away, sliding down the face until it shattered at her feet. In the fracture, she saw a cavity, smooth, ovoid, lined with cedar splinters. Inside lay a mask, white as bleached bone, fragrant with ancient wood, its eye sockets depthless. She did not remember climbing, yet found herself halfway up the cliff, fingers wedged into narrow crevices, the desert yawning below. The mask waited in its niche, lips parted in silent invitation. When she reached it, her arms shook from fatigue, but the vibration in her bones steadied her, guided her hands to lift the piece free. It weighed almost nothing. On its inner surface, someone had inscribed her name, not carved, grown, The letters seemed part of the bone, like rings inside a tree, spelling Elise in spiraling calligraphy. Something moved behind the eye holes, emptiness folding inward, a void flexing. She felt it studying her the way she had studied the glyphs. Not malicious, only curious. Learning her edges, her cracks, her language. Compulsion eclipsed fear. She raised the mask to her face. Cold, then warmth, as if the bone exhaled. Darkness flooded her vision. Silence throttled her hearing. Yet within that hush, she perceived an architecture of sound. Corridors of breath, chambers where sentences echoed without origin. She no longer needed the recorder. The cliff's voice now nested behind her ribs. Words bloomed in her mind, neither spoken nor thought. They described hunger, not for flesh, not for soul, but for shape. The canyon longed to wear a face, to articulate its endless erosion into a single, perfect utterance. It had tried masks of echo and wind, of shadow and dust, but they crumbled. Bone, it discovered, remembered. Cedar remembered. Flesh, walking among stones, remembered. Elise felt the canyon's centuries pressing against her skull, petitioning for adoption. If she would carry its voice beyond these walls, it promised release. Her steps would carve new glyphs, her breath would seed new chants, and the world would learn the word that had no match. She lowered the mask. Daylight stabbed her eyes. Below, the campsite looked small, fragile, like a memory she'd already begun forgetting. The recorder lay in the sand, tape still spinning, though the reels were bare. She heard bells jangling, soft questioning, a breeze, or something walking the perimeter, testing the alarm's vocabulary. She glanced back at the niche. No trace remained, only bare rock, sun-bleached and ordinary. The mask, however, was now warm against her palm, as if blood pulsed beneath the cedar grain. She set it over her face again, and the world fell silent in approval. Night embraced the canyon one final time. She stood where the tent had been and spoke the word that had no match. The cliffs echoed it, 1,000 disparate mouths aligning into chorus. Sand vibrated, drew patterns around her boots, spirals, jagged sigils, and at the center the outline of a kneeling woman. But this time the figure rose, stone ribs flexed, stone fingers unclenched. The cliff detached a shadow, tall and faceless, wearing wind like a cloak. It stepped forward, joints grinding ancient dust into new syllables. Elise did not retreat. She walked to meet it. Their shadows merged, and where they overlapped, the desert floor darkened as though hydrating on inexistence. By dawn, Ghost Ledge was empty. No tent, no equipment, no tracks. Even the doubled footprints were erased by a breeze that left every other patch of sand untouched. Only the cliff remained, its surface unblemished except for a single symbol at eye level, a circle bisected by a vertical line, the simplest rendering of a mask. Beneath it, a word. It resembled no glyph recorded in any archive, yet those who saw it felt an inexplicable urge to pronounce it, to roll its consonants across their teeth, to let its vowel hang open like a door no wind could shut. Tourists avoided the canyon after that, compasses spun near its rim. But sometimes on windless nights, hikers swore they heard 3 soft knocks echoing across the mesas, followed by a woman's voice, quiet and patient, teaching the darkness how to say its own name. And the darkness, attentive student that it was, answered back. The echo folded into itself, a long, hollow resonance, like a cave remembering a sound it was never supposed to hear. And then silence again, longer than before, deeper. A silence that listened. The desert around Ghost Ledge entered a kind of pause, as though something massive had inhaled but forgotten how to exhale. Clouds passed above, thin and filamented, but their shadows never reached the canyon floor. They stretched toward it, seemed to lean, but always stopped just short, like animals unwilling to enter sacred ground. The petroglyphs no longer changed. They no longer needed to. They had finished speaking. Now they waited for replies. Far from the canyon, in the cinder-colored quiet of a university archive, an envelope arrived, unmarked, hand-addressed. The handwriting was familiar to the archivist, just legible enough to recognize Elise Navarro's distinctive looped capital N, a detail she always insisted on. There was no return address, no postage, but the envelope was dusty, and the dust was red, the kind that stuck to skin. Inside, a single tape, analog, labeled in graphite, not speech, not yet. No one knew where it had been sent from. The university's mailing logs showed no entry. When they played it, the tape began with 30 seconds of soft, regular breath, followed by static. Then a voice. Elise's voice, but not quite. It was smoother, as though played from an instrument with no reed, no strain. She was reciting something, not English, not Spanish, not anything known. Each word followed a rhythm, 3 beats, pause, then 2 more, like breath shaped into a ritual. At minute 5, the tape spiked with harsh frequencies, too high for the human ear to resolve. Dogs in the building howled. An old man across the street, retired and mostly blind, wept in his kitchen without knowing why. At minute 6, the breathing stopped. When they rewound the tape, the words were gone. The sound remained, but the voice, the language, even the breath, erased. All that was left were 3 knocks spaced far apart. Weeks later, a graduate assistant transcribing archival materials noticed something odd in a photo from Elise's last known field trip. The cliff wall, the petroglyphs, they were there. But the shadow Elise cast, it wore a different mask. Not the bone, not the cedar. Something heavier, something that didn't end where her body did. Its edges curled backward into the stone as though the canyon had reached forward while Elise stood still and tried her shape on just for a moment. She hadn't noticed? Not then. She hadn't flinched. She hadn't flinched. The mask fit too well. Some say the story ends with her vanishing. Others say she became something else, a vessel, a voice, a way for the canyon to listen outward through skin and breath and unblinking silence. But those who really listen, those who come too close to the petroglyphs etched above Ghost Ledge, know it didn't end at all. Because every year in late August, when the sun aligns with the cliff mouth at dusk, a low hum begins. No device records it, no mouth forms it. But it's there, just below hearing, an intake of breath, a stretching of syllables, a word forming behind the veil of stone. One that almost sounds like a name. Almost. But not quite. Because it's still learning, still shaping, still listening for someone, anyone, who can pronounce it correctly, who can let it in. And sometimes when the wind drags across the broken lip of the canyon just right, you'll hear 3 knocks. Soft. Slow. Steady. Then, a voice. Your voice, saying something you've never said, something you don't remember learning, a chant etched into you like grooves in stone. And if you answer, if you repeat it back, you won't forget, but you won't quite remember either. Because when the mask fits, you don't wear it. It wears you. The echoes hang in the air long after they should fade, clinging the way heat clings to stone long after sundown. They wait, expectant, 3 empty bowls laid out for someone else's breath. In the city, far from the desert's rim, archivist Mara Layton wakes at 3 a.m. with a brittle taste behind her teeth. There is no sound in her apartment, only the quiet rush of the refrigerator, the hush of traffic 7 floors below. Yet something inside her skull thrums 3 times, hollow and patient. She thinks of the envelope, of Elise's careful loops. She should not have played the tape after hours. She should not have slowed it down, reversed it, layered the spectrogram like a palimpsest until shapes bloomed in the noise. But curiosity is an open door. Once it swings, the dark merely waits for an invitation. Morning. Sunlight limps across her desk, painting long rectangles over stacks of untouched dissertations. Mara slides a cassette into the deck again, headphones tight. Nothing for 40 seconds. Then those breaths, calm as someone meditating in a tomb. At 0:43, a syllable emerges, low and unfinished, like the throat clearing of a distant hillside. Mara leans closer. The syllable repeats at 47, fuller, shaped by a tongue that should not be there. It strikes her that the speaker is practicing, warming vocal cords that might once have been stone. At 55, a second voice answers in near-perfect imitation, off by a fractional lilt, the way an echo misses the original key. Mara doesn't realize she's mouthing the response until the deck clicks off. In the silence, her office feels smaller. Every book spines outward, watching. A coil of cedar shavings, souvenir from some forgotten crafts fair, sits in a dish by the window. Its scent nudges memory. Campfires, dried sage, the whine of insects after midnight. Mara blinks. Had the shavings always been there? She can't recall placing them. Yet the fragrance is undeniable, fresh, resinous, as though shavings were cut moments ago. That night she dreams of a corridor chiseled through sandstone. Glyphs pulse on the walls like heartbeats. She walks barefoot. The floor is warm. Ahead, the corridor bends, but sound travels straight. 3 knocks, measured, each one deeper than the last. She follows until the passage opens into an atrium under open sky. There at the center stands Elise, or something wearing Elise's outline the way clouds wear moonlight. The cedar bone mask shields her face. She raises a hand, coaxing. Mara steps forward, though her legs shake like straw in high wind. When she's close enough to touch, Elise speaks a single word. A stone dropped into a frozen lake. It cracks everything. Mara jolts awake before the word reaches air. The following week, documents vanish from the archive. Only those tied to the canyon expedition. Maps, field reports, permit applications stamped but never mailed. Security footage shows nothing, just empty aisles filmed by indifferent cameras. Mara finds herself filling out missing item forms, handwriting sluggish, each letter heavier than the one before. She notices her capital N now loops like Elise's. She tries to stop. Her hand will not obey. Evenings are worse. Street lamps outside her window flicker in clusters of 3. Neighbors complain of knocks reverberating through the building's plumbing. Always 3, always at the same intervals, Mara remembers from the tape. She disconnects her doorbell, but the knocking finds new surfaces, radiators, bookshelves, the hollow heart of her headboard. She decides to leave. A satellite map on her laptop marks the canyon as blank terrain. No name, no waypoints, but she knows the coordinates. They were penned in Elise's margin notes, now etched behind Mara's eyes. She rents a car and drives through days that feel bent out of true, sun leaning closer than physics allows. At each gas station, the radio flickers to static, unfurling those half-formed syllables between advertisements for windshield wiper fluid and all-night diners. By the time highway turns to gravel, Mara is mouthing entire sentences in the unknown tongue. They taste of dust and cedar, of long-buried marrow rehydrated by moonlight. She reaches the canyon rim near dusk. The Jeep Elise abandoned is gone, only faint rust stains where bolts once kissed the sand. Mara shoulders her pack, descends the switchback trail, counts footfalls to quiet the tremor in her blood. At Ghost Ledge, wind coils lazily, indifferent. The cliff looks bare, unassuming, a canvas scrubbed clean. Yet when the last sunlight skims the face, shadows gather into patterns, spirals, jagged sigils, a mask half hidden. Mara sets her recorder on the same shelf Elise used. Old batteries, still warm from the glove compartment, slide into place as if they never left. She doesn't press record. The device springs to life anyway, counter-rolling zeros, red LED blinking heart-like. She waits, breathing slow, each inhale timed to 3 silent knocks her mind supplies. Night lowers itself in layers. Stars ignite. Crickets hush. Mara's thoughts stretch thin. Filaments tug toward the petroglyphs. A hush sweeps the ledge. Then the cliff exhales. Sand trickles. From the darkness above, stone begins to move, patient as glacier drift, scratching fresh language into its skin. Mara wants to run. Instead, she speaks, voice gentle, imitating the cadence etched inside her dreams. The canyon pauses mid-scratch, listening. She repeats the phrase. Stone resumes carving, faster now, chisel strokes of unseen tools. Letters bloom like pale lichen, spelling a name in characters neither old nor new, her own. Wind dies completely. Every sound dims except the rasp of stone and her heart stuttering to match it. She takes a step closer to the cliff. The ground vibrates, subtle but insistent, coaxing her forward. Another step. Static builds in the recorder, white caps on an ocean of hush. Another step. The mask's outline deepens in shadow. Eye hollows yawning, cedar grains swirling in bone. It smells of rain that never falls. When she reaches the wall, the rock feels warm. She lays a palm on the newly carved script, blood answers drumming in triplets. The word beneath her skin rises, a bubble in static bursts across her tongue before she can stop it. The canyon replies, single syllable, perfectly mirrored. Not an echo, a conversation. The mask leans out of the stone as though extruding from solid matter, waiting. Mara lifts trembling fingers to its jaw. Frictionless, it leaves the cliff, lighter than any artifact has a right to be. Inside its rim, another inscription, not her name, but a blank space, an invitation. She thinks of Elise, of empty archives, of voices learning shape. She thinks she hears distant bells, delicate, testing wind that isn't there, and the mask turns in her hands, tilting as though it sees without eyes. Mara realizes it is not waiting for her to wear it. It is waiting to wear her. She hesitates, but the canyon's hush is absolute. Any choice not made will still be answered. Better to speak than be spoken through. She raises the mask. Bone grazes skin, ice then ember. Visions bloom behind her eyes, corridors of glyphs, spirals eating their own tails. Elise standing just beyond reach, mouth open, soundless instructions spilling from her teeth. A third presence joins, larger than either, vast as sedimentary time. It has no face, only the remembered pressure of a face-shaped absence. Mara gasps. The breath doesn't leave her lips, the mask drinks it, translating. From the throat of the canyon, 1,000 stone mouths answer in new harmony, a lattice of consonants, a river of vowel, each syllable a carving, each carving a doorway. She feels her pulse slowing, synchronizing to a rhythm older than blood. 3 beats, pause, 2. The cadence of knocks, of breaths, of syllables learning to stand upright. The recorder clicks off, storage full of quiet, but quiet is never empty, it is only waiting for a name. Mara turns from the cliff. Her shadow no longer fits her shape, it flows behind, malleable, mask-like. Each step leaves glyphs in sand, brief, shallow, gone with the next breath of wind, yet permanent where it matters. She walks up the trail without looking back. The canyon allows it, content now that its voice has legs. At the rim, headlights pool on gravel. But she leaves the car. Roads will come to her. Highways bend, cities tilt, archives grow porous. She need only speak, and stone will answer, through concrete, through glass, through earbuds half buried in commuter ears. In apartments miles away, sleepers stir, hearing 3 soft knocks inside ribs they thought were theirs. A syllable slides beneath locked doors, practices pronouncing each tenant's name. Soon it will get the intonation right. Soon the names will open like gates, letting the word inside. Back at Ghost Ledge, dawn leaks across striated rock. The glyphs fade under harsh light, but the mask-shaped niche remains empty. Wind returns, casual, whistling 3 rising notes through cracks that weren't there yesterday. Ravens land on the ledge, tilt their heads at the new hollows, caw once, a short, puzzled sound, then lift into the sky, carrying echoes under their wings. The canyon waits. Learning never ends, it only changes masks. Somewhere on an eastbound bus, a passenger whispers in her sleep. A word impossible to spell spirals from her lips. Across the aisle, another passenger repeats it perfectly. None of the waking minds notice, but the silence between engine growls stretches, hungry, counting time in sets of 3. And beneath the road, where ancient riverbeds fossilized into strata, a ripple passes through stone, a low acknowledgement, traveling farther each time, seeking caves, culverts, the hollow of every open mouth. For language, once given breath, never forgets its hunger, nor the feel of the mask it grew to feed. A telephone rings in an empty pay booth on the outskirts of a forgotten desert town. No one has used the booth in years. Beneath the cracked receiver, a sun-bleached card still lists the cost of a local call as 15 cents. The ring is muted, almost bashful, as though cautious of its own echo. It tolls 3 times, stops, waits, then chimes twice more, a rhythm too deliberate to be random. The wind lifts dust, revealing no footprints in a 50-yard radius. Yet on the smeared glass of the booth, someone has traced a glyph, a circle cleaved by a single vertical stroke, faint but recent. The telephone rings again, softer. Inside the line, if one listened closely, a breath gathers. 2 counties north, an overnight radio host named Delia Kim reads weather reports in a dim studio. Her shift is graveyard. Only long-haul truckers and insomniacs ride her signal. Tonight, dead air crawls between her sentences. An intrusion she blames on faulty compressors until she hears it. 3 faint knocks threaded through the silence, so precise they eclipse the static. She kills the mic, removes her headphones. The knocks continue, now in the speakers overhead, now under the desk, now behind the soundproof wall, as if the whole room were a drum. Delia's heart stutters to match. Instinct drives her to speak into the void, ask who's there, but the words catch on her tongue. Because she suddenly knows the answer isn't a who, it's a when, and always and everywhere loosening around its edges. The on-air light flicks to red by itself. The mixing board levels rise. Delia's voice returns to the signal, though her lips stay closed. A whisper in a language she has never learned, unfolding in triplets, pausing then resuming with the steadiness of something reading from stone. Across 4 states, truckers lean closer to their dashboards. Headlights waver. For a heartbeat, the interstate seems to tilt, as though gravity rerouted through the invisible mouth of an enormous mask. In a suburban kitchen, a child traces condensation on a window. Outside, the cul-de-sac sleeps, but every dog presses ears flat, hackles lifting to a sound humans cannot parse. The child hums in intervals of 3, pauses, hums again. His breath fogs the glass. With one finger, he sketches the outline of a circle, bisects it. His mother, half awake in the hallway, whispers his name. The child turns. Under street lamp spill, his eyes reflect hollow, a brief, eerie trick of light, then return to normal, wide with bewilderment at the worry in her voice. He doesn't remember leaving bed, doesn't know why the window feels warm to the touch. She leads him back to sleep, but all night the air vents click in odd patterns, syllables teased from aluminum ducts. City centers flicker with rolling blackouts no meteorologist can explain. Traffic lights blink 333, then darken, then blink 22, then hold. People record low hums in subway tunnels, post the clips online. Audio engineers analyze spectrums, swear the hums contain formant structures resembling human vowels, only upside down, mirror echoes of speech that would become intelligible if air itself reversed direction. Threaded conspiracy maps bloom on forums. Theorists tie everything back to a desert canyon no map admits exists. An archivist named Mara appears in one grainy gas station CCTV frame. She walks past pump islands without paying, head tilted as though listening to wires inside the sky. The attendant notices later the taped outline of a mask on the concrete, drawn in water that never evaporates. In a hospital radiology wing, technicians complain that CT scanners are picking up interference nobody can trace. Phantom glyphs appear on imaging plates, thin white spirals superimposed over lungs, skulls, uteruses. Patients see them and weep without understanding why. The spirals seem positioned to show where breath begins. One tech, sleepless, re-renders the scans at higher contrast. Between slices, she finds shapes aligning into a word that changes each time the image refreshes. On the final frame, it resolves into her own name. The lights fail. Monitors hiss. In that brief darkness, she hears 3 soft knocks echo from inside the lead-lined walls. High above the desert, planes divert around a growing signal void, an atmospheric pocket that scrambles radio altimeters and cockpit intercoms, replacing pilot chatter with loops of gentle breathing. Controllers insist it's impossible, yet transcripts document the breaths, always followed by 2 spoken syllables. Black box analysis later reveals those syllables form a perfect palindromic waveform. Read forward, they name the void. Read backward, they name the listener. Mara walks city streets that seem to recognize her footfalls, each step answered by shoal-deep echoes beneath pavement. She watches people pass, notes the moment their cadence falters, the fraction of a second they align to the triplet rhythm. Most shake it off like a chill. Some pause, eyes glazing before memory reasserts. But with every night, the pauses lengthen, the rhythm embeds, and new voices join the hush between car horns and sirens. Mara does not speak much. She doesn't need to. When she must, her mouth shapes only borrowed vowels. Yet at bus stops, in elevator shafts, on escalators rising into gallerias, strangers find themselves replying to her silence, murmuring syllables they forget the instant they surface, leaving behind the aftertaste of cedar and ancient dust. The first masks appear on building facades, negative silhouettes where soot is scrubbed away, revealing pale concrete beneath. No artist claims them. They just manifest overnight, always in sets of 3, mouths open as if tasting the city's fear. Historians debate their meaning, but children instinctively press small palms to their outlines, feeling for heat that isn't there. Parents pull them away, yet hours later the outlines reappear on those children's sketch pads, carved in wax crayon with unsettling precision. A linguistics conference convenes to address the unexplained speech contagion. Experts present spectrographic slides, each suggesting a nascent pigeon none can attribute to any single source. Mid-panel, microphones cut out, projector screens go white. Into the hush, an unseen voice recites a 13-syllable phrase, nowhere and everywhere, resonant through skull, not ear. Scholars later transcribe phonetics by memory. Every transcript differs, except for the final 2 beats, identical across versions. They realize those beats match the first glyphs discovered in Elise Navarro's Canyon notes, though none of them has access to the missing files. Fear flickers behind academic curiosity. Funding requests stall. Study groups dissolve into quiet resignation. How do you publish peer-reviewed papers about a language that rewrites itself faster than it can be peer-reviewed? At 11:11 p.m. on the autumn equinox, the power grid of an entire state dips for exactly 3 breaths. When lights return, highway marquee signs no longer display traffic updates. Instead, they show a single looping character, circle bisected, unrendered by any known font set. Engineers wipe firmware, replace boards, but the symbol returns, glowing with borrowed electrons. Commuters drive beneath, unaware they're whispering the sigil's name, mouths moving in rearview mirrors though the radios stay silent. Deep inside a data center, anomaly flags cascade as servers log packets of empty data. Headers correct, payload 0, yet each packet carries a time to live of 3, hops twice, then self-destructs, leaving network traces that hum at 19.98 Hz. Technicians track the source to 0.0.0, shrug, run diagnostics. In the white noise roar of cooling fans, they catch half phrases in the rack's vibration patterns, learning, listening, becoming. They chalk it up to fatigue until they notice cedar shavings collecting in the floor grates. Mara stands on a pedestrian bridge overlooking a river that reflects the city's fractured neon. Wind carries voices, hundreds, overlapping, some weeping, some laughing soft, all threading the same unplaceable words. She feels the weightless mask warm within her pulse. It does not rest on her face anymore. It shapes the space around her, a negative geometry that cities curve to avoid. Across the span, she spots a familiar outline, Elise, or the memory of her, watching with eyes that are hollows full of stars. Between them, distance thins like paper scorched by slow flame. The bridge steel groans not from strain but from modulation, as if coaxed into resonance. Every rivet vibrates, speaks, learns. Mara steps forward. Elise mirrors. With each pace, the triplet pulse grows louder, not with sound but with inevitability. People crossing freeze mid-stride, breath held, minds brushed by a longing they cannot name. At the center of the bridge, they meet. No handshake, no embrace, only the moment 2 vectors align into continuous line. The void where a greeting would live is occupied by knocks. 3 pause 2, the skeleton key of the new tongue. Wind ceases. River stills. Billboards dim to black, yet their LED arrays continue to glow faintly. An afterimage of the bisected circle repeating across water's glassy skin. Elise lifts her palm. Etched on it is Mara's name, formed by pale ridges of healed scar. Mara spreads her own hand. Within her lifeline, a fresh groove spells Elise. They share a silence that compresses years into heartbeat. Then, together, they breathe out a word. It is not recorded. No microphone remains that can hold it. But every window across the city flexes inward, bending with the pressure of soundless articulation. Street lamps bow. Rats flood onto sidewalks, stunned into reverent hush. Above, clouds migrate in precise spirals, mapping glyphs onto sky vault. Electric drones filming nightlife capture only static as the lenses ice over with cedar-scented frost. The word ends. The pause begins, a hollow so absolute it reorganizes physics, teaches silence new ways to listen. In that gap, time falls out of cadence. Seconds stretch, snap, realign as if seeking a rhythm older than clockwork. When sound returns, it is not sound. It is comprehension blooming simultaneously in millions of minds. A knowledge without vocabulary, felt beneath language, instructing living things how to let stones speak through marrow. People halt mid-sentence, tears drawn without sadness. Dogs sit, tilt heads. Servers cease strobing error lights. Instead, they pulse gently, obedient to a heartbeat in fiber optic dark. Wind turbines rotate thrice, stall, rotate twice, resume, powering a grid that suddenly seems more alive than the towns it feeds. Night deepens. On the bridge, Elise lowers her maskless face, eyes bright with desert starlight. Mara mirrors. They step apart, yet the space between them does not close. It widens, filling with a form shaped like neither, taller than both, composed of hush and shifting dunes, cedar splinter and bone tint. The form turns downstream, walks on air dense as talc. Each stride etches footprints of luminous dust that hang a moment before swirling into spiral runes. Where it passes, buildings exhale sighs of settling concrete as if foundations remember an older alignment. Elise walks west, Mara east. For every mile they cover, traffic signals fall into the triplet cadence, libraries misshelve themselves by resonance instead of dewy, and newborns open eyes already reflecting pale, hollow masks. The city forgets what quiet used to mean. It only knows the new hush, one that watches back, patient, always learning. In the canyon that birthed the first whisper, dawn finds Ghost Ledge unchanged, yet not. Where the mask once nested, thousands of sparrows now cluster, wiring the air with clicks that almost resemble words. They lift in a synchronized wave, circle thrice, pause, circle twice more, then arrow outward, bearing fragments of language on wings that beat in triplet measure. Beneath them, the petroglyphs sparkle fresh, edges sharp as though carved in the hour before sunrise. If one dared climb and trace them, they would find no tribe's memory, no linguist's echo, only a single phrase repeating down the cliff: "We are speaking." Listen with your bones. And across continents, in subway tunnels, forest hollows, offshore rigs swaying above black water, the same knocks answer. 3. Pause. 2. A door everywhere, forever ajar, waiting for the next breath to slip through and finish learning its name. The new hush deepens until even memories seem muffled, cushioned in velvet dark. Cities flicker like distant embers, highways empty, engines cooling in orderly lines. Somewhere church bells swing but never strike, the clappers caught in a suspension of intent. Mara feels the pulse ease from triplet to twin, then single, then none. Not silence, but a steady, voiceless presence curling around every ribcage, testing fit. She understands this is the last lesson. When the cadence ends, the sentence is complete. Across deserts and oceans, Elise reaches the same realization, breath aligning to a hush so profound it pulls tears from her without sorrow. The mask she once bore now hovers behind her eyes, weightless as dust motes in angled light. They speak, not aloud, but in the shared marrow of all who have ever listened. One word only, untranslatable, shaped by absence, heard by stone, water, blood. It flowers outward, petal upon petal of pure comprehension, until language itself feels small. Skyscrapers settle an inch, relieved of strain. Trees bow, releasing a million leaf-shaped sigils that spiral into dusk. Oceans pause their tides for half a heartbeat, as though tasting the syllable on salt tongues. Then, gently, the presence exhales. Sound returns. A child laughing in a backyard, an old dog barking at nothing, wind rattling eaves. The knocks are gone. What remains is an intimacy with stillness, each listener now knowing how to bend breath into that impossible word, yet sensing it must never be spoken again. Elise turns inland, Mara toward the sea. Their paths will never cross, but they share a final recognition. The lesson is finished, the door quietly closed. All that remains is the echo of having understood, an afterglow of cedar and bone, etched faintly in the world's new hush. Far beneath Ghost Ledge, a single grain of sandstone loosens, tumbles, settles. The canyon listens, content.